In a quiet college town, four young friends went to sleep and never woke up. There was no forced entry, no obvious motive, and for weeks, no suspect. What happened inside that rent? Moscow is a small university town tucked into the rolling Palouse hills of northern Idaho, home to roughly 25,000 people. It was the kind of place where residents rep. The University of Idaho anchors the town, drawing thousands of students each year to its tree-lined campus. Fraternities, sororities, and off-campus rentals fill the surrounding BO. Bryan Kohberger, 21, was bright, fiercely loyal, and known for her big personality. She had reportedly just finished her degree and was preparing to move on to a new chapter. Madison Mogan, known as Maddie, was 21 and inseparable from Kaylee since childhood. The two had been best friends for years, sharing classes, a home, and dreams of life after. Zana Kernodle, 20, was vibrant, funny, and adored by those who knew her. A member of the campus community, she was described as everyone's best friend, quick with the joke and on. Ethan Chapin, 20, was a tall, easygoing freshman with a reputation for never taking life too seriously. At 6'4", he was hard to miss and quick to make people laugh. These four were not strangers thrown together by chance. They were friends, roommates, and partners, woven into the same tight circle of college life. Kaylee and Maddie were lifelong. The students lived at 1122 King Road, a three-story rental perched on a small slope at the edge of campus. Each floor held bedrooms, and a sliding glass door opened off the kitchen. The house was shared by several roommates. Among them were Kaylee, Maddie, and Zana, along with two other young women, Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funke. The home buzzed with the U. November 12, 2022, began like any other Saturday in a college town. Football had been played that day, parties were planned, and the students scattered across Moe's. That evening, Kaylee and Maddie went together to a downtown sports bar called the Corner Club, then later to a food truck for a late-night bite. Surveillance and witnesses placed T. Meanwhile, Zana and Ethan attended a party at Ethan's fraternity, the Sigma Chi House, just a short distance away. The young couple enjoyed a normal college night among friends buff. Security footage from the food truck reportedly captured Kaylee and Maddie around 1:40 in the morning, looking relaxed and unbothered. The clip would become one of the last TN. After the food truck, Kaylee and Maddie reportedly caught a ride and returned to King Road at around 1:45 in the morning. Zana and Ethan had also made their way back to T. By around 2 in the morning, all four victims and the two surviving roommates were inside the house on King Road. The town was asleep. Inside, the students drifted toward bed, foe. Two roommates, later identified as Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk, were also home that night on the lower floors. Both would survive. Their accounts and the timeline of their acts. In the early morning hours, one surviving roommate reportedly heard unusual sounds and what she thought was crying. According to court records, she opened her door and saw a figure. The roommate, just 19, reportedly stood frozen in what investigators later called a state of shock. She locked her door and did not immediately grasp the horror that had occupied. After the intruder slipped out through the sliding door, the house went quiet again. Whatever had happened in those upper bedrooms was over within minutes, investigators believe. The intruder reportedly left on foot, then by vehicle, slipping away from King Road in the pre-dawn blackness. No alarm was raised. No neighbor called police. For several hours, the HU. As morning light crept over the Palouse hills, the house showed no obvious sign of what had happened inside. The surviving roommates woke, at first assuming their housemates were S. By late morning, the surviving roommates grew alarmed when their friends would not wake or respond. According to released documents, one roommate called others over because though. Around midday on November 13th, a 911 call was finally placed from the house, reporting an unconscious person. The call brought police racing to King Road. What officers disc? Officers arrived to a scene that would later be described in court records as horrific. 4 students were found dead from stabbing wounds across the upper floors of the home. Authorities soon confirmed the unthinkable. Bryan Kohberger, Madison Mogan, Zana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, all in their early 20s, had been killed. A community that prided. News of the killings tore through Moscow and the university community. Students were stunned, parents frightened, and the normally sleepy town overwhelmed by grief and fear. Many WW. In the early days, police had no suspect and no weapon, fueling intense public fear. Was the killer a stranger or someone known to the victims? Was the community still in danger? W. Investigators faced a daunting puzzle. There was no murder weapon recovered at the scene, no eyewitness who could name a killer, and seemingly no clear motive. The brutality suggests. In the days after the murders, many University of Idaho students fled home, and some did not return for the rest of the semester. Classes emptied, security increased. The fear was. National and international media poured into Moscow, turning the quiet town into the backdrop of a true crime obsession. Reporters, podcasters, and online sleuths dissected every D. As official information stayed scarce, armchair detectives flooded social media with theories. Innocent people were wrongly accused online, and false leads spread rapidly. The Fin. Moscow's small police department, aided by the FBI and Idaho State Police, asked the public for patience as they worked methodically. They knew that one misstep could jeopardize A. Investigators were reportedly flooded with thousands of tips, photos, and videos from the public. Each had to be reviewed and triaged. Somewhere in that ocean of information, as days turned into weeks without an arrest, frustration grew among the victims' families and the public. Vigils continued. The families spoke to media, pleading for justice and unknown to the public, investigators had recovered a critical clue at the scene, a leather knife sheath left behind near one of the victims. The sheath, reportedly for a military's. On that knife sheath, forensic analysts reportedly found a single source of male DNA on the button snap. At the time, it matched no one in any criminal database. But that tiny BOL gemming. With no database match, investigators reportedly turned to investigative genetic genealogy, a cutting-edge technique that compares crime scene DNA to public ancestry databases. Meanwhile, investigators combing through surveillance footage spotted a recurring detail, a white sedan seen near King Road around the time of the murders. The vehicle's repeated P. Analysts eventually narrowed the mystery vehicle to a white Hyundai Elantra. In December, police took the extraordinary step of publicly asking for help identifying any such car in. As tips about white Elantras came in and genetic genealogy advanced, the strands of the investigation reportedly began to converge. Phone data, vehicle records, and DNA were quietal. The name that emerged stunned investigators: Bryan Kohberger, a 28-year-old criminology PhD student at nearby Washington State University, just across the state line. Kohberger was reportedly pursuing advanced studies in criminology, the very science of why people commit crime. He had studied under noted experts and had even posted research solely. Kohberger lived in Pullman, Washington, home to Washington State University, only about 10 miles from the King Road house in Moscow. The two college towns sit close together on the HCO. At Washington State, Kohberger worked as a teaching assistant. Classmates and colleagues later described him in unsettling terms. One fellow teaching assistant reportedly called high. According to later released documents, some peers found Kohberger off-putting, describing behavior they considered creepy or domineering in the months before the killings. Akalia. Investigators reportedly obtained Kohberger's cell phone records, which placed his device in the area of King Road multiple times in the months before the murders. On the night according to court documents, Kohberger's phone allegedly stopped connecting to the network shortly before the killings and resumed afterward, a gap investigators viewed as an été. Surveillance cameras across Moscow reportedly captured a white Elantra circling near King Road in the early hours, then speeding away after the time of the murders. Investigators By late December, investigators reportedly had DNA, vehicle evidence, and phone records all pointing to Kohberger, but they moved carefully. Kohberger had traveled home to Pennsylvania. Kohberger and his father had reportedly driven across the country from Washington to the family home in Pennsylvania for winter break. Unbeknownst to him, FBI surveillance was Watts. In a critical move, investigators in Pennsylvania reportedly retrieved trash from outside the Kohberger family home. DNA extracted from the garbage was compared to the sample on the HD. The genetic comparison reportedly indicated the trash DNA came from the father of whoever left DNA on the sheath. That statistical link, combined with the vehicle and phone evidence, with probable cause assembled, an Idaho court reportedly issued an arrest warrant for Bryan Kohberger on 4 counts of first-degree murder and burglary. The paperwork that had taken in the early hours of December 30th, 2022, a tactical team reportedly raided the Kohberger family home in Pennsylvania. They breached the house and took Bryan Koh. Word of the arrest broke like a thunderclap. After 47 agonizing days, the case finally had a suspect in custody. The relief in Moscow was immense, mixed with disbelief. According to released documents, when investigators first spoke with Kohberger after the arrest, he reportedly seemed concerned about his parents and his dog amid the police apparat. Court records indicate that when detectives asked whether Kohberger knew what had happened, he said he was only aware of a homicide because of a campus alert when pressed to disque. Prosecutors later revealed a selfie Kohberger allegedly took hours after the murders, reportedly giving a thumbs up. The seemingly casual photo, taken the same morning, struck many. Kohberger waived extradition and was flown back to Idaho to face charges. He was booked into the Lada County Jail in Moscow, the very town where the murders occurred. The criminal. Kohberger was formally charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary. At early hearings, he appeared composed and said little. The gravity of the accuser. The case became a national fixation. Every hearing was scrutinized, every document parsed. True crime communities, news networks, and ordinary citizens followed the slow grind of J. To protect the integrity of the case, the court imposed a sweeping gag order, barring lawyers, investigators, and others from speaking publicly. The silence frustrated a publican. Investigators and the public searched desperately for a motive, but none was obvious. Kohberger reportedly had no known connection to the victims. Theories swirled, from obsession. Despite intense scrutiny, investigators reportedly could not establish that Kohberger personally knew any of the 4 victims. He appeared to be, in the most frightening sense, AS. As the case advanced, prosecutors leaned heavily on the knife sheath DNA, the surveillance of the Elantra, and the phone records. The defense would later raise questions about Chai. Kohberger's defense team, led by attorney Ann Taylor, mounted a vigorous challenge. They scrutinized the genetic genealogy methods, the search warrants, and the handling of evidence. Throughout 2023 and into 2024, the case wound through a maze of pre-trial litigation. Hearings addressed evidence, venue, cameras in the courtroom, and prosecutors announced they would seek the death penalty if Kohberger were convicted, raising the stakes dramatically. Idaho is among the states that retain capital punishment. Citing intense local publicity, the court moved the trial out of Latah County to Ada County in Boise, Idaho's capital. The change aimed to secure an impartial jury in a case that While awaiting trial, Kohberger was held in custody under close watch. According to documents released later, an inmate housed nearby described unusual habits, long showers, washing. The accounts of Kohberger's jailhouse behavior fascinated and disturbed the public. The obsessive hand-washing and sleeplessness were interpreted by many as signs of a troubled man. Through every hearing and delay, the families of Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan endured unimaginable pain. They attended court, spoke to media, and kept their loved ones' memories. Amid the legal grind, the community refused to let the victims be reduced to a case file. Memorials, scholarships, and tributes honored Kaylee's loyalty, Maddie's gentleness, Xana. Vigils were held not only in Moscow, but in the victims' hometowns and beyond. Strangers moved by the tragedy lit candles and shared messages of support. The 4 students, once no W. Kaylee Goncalves' family, including her father Steve and sister Aliva, became some of the most outspoken voices in the case. They pushed for transparency, criticized delays, and the road to trial was anything but smooth. There were disputes over a leaked video, investigations into who breached the gag order, and battles over what evidence the jury could hear. At one point, confidential investigative material reportedly leaked to a television program, sparking outrage and an inquiry into how it happened. The court had not publicly identified. The defense reportedly pressed for additional DNA testing and raised concerns about the chain of custody around the crucial sheath evidence. They argued the genetic methods deserve By 2025, after more than 2 years of litigation, the case was finally barreling toward trial. Jury selection loomed, and the prospect of a months-long capital trial. In a stunning turn, prosecutors and the defense reached a plea agreement. Rather than face a jury and the possibility of execution, Kohberger would plead guilty to all charges in E. On July 2, 2025, Bryan Kohberger stood in court and pleaded guilty to all charges, 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 of burglary. After nearly 3 years. One by one, the charges were read, and Kohberger reportedly acknowledged each killing. He offered no explanation and no apparent emotion. For the families who had waited so long, 8 charges were read. The plea deal spared Kohberger from a potential death sentence and a grueling public trial. In exchange, he admitted guilt and waived his right to appeal. Some families supported T. By pleading guilty, Kohberger ensured he would not face execution, the punishment prosecutors had once sought. Instead, he faced life in prison without parole, for a case that had. The plea split the victims' families. Some welcomed the closure and the avoidance of years of appeals. Others felt cheated of a full trial and the answers it might have forced into. As part of the agreement, Kohberger forfeited his right to appeal, meaning the conviction would stand permanently. There would be no decades of legal challenges, no chance to avert. Even in pleading guilty, Kohberger gave no reason for the murders. He did not explain why he targeted that house or those students, the single most haunting question of the entire. With the guilty plea entered, the case moved toward formal sentencing, set for later that July. The families would finally have the chance to confront the man who destroyed their W. On July 23, 2025, Bryan Kohberger returned to an Ada County courtroom in Boise to learn his fate. Wearing an orange jail jumpsuit, he sat expressionless. One after another, more than a dozen family members and friends rose to deliver victim impact statements. Some addressed Kohberger directly, others refused to even look at him. For the first time publicly, surviving roommate Dylan Mortensen spoke. She described the lasting terror of that night, the panic attacks, the sleepless fear, and how the experience. Mortensen reportedly told the court that the attack broke her in ways she had not known were possible, leaving her terrified to even close her eyes. She described escape plans and the other surviving roommate, Bethany Funk, had her statement read by a friend. She too described the lingering trauma and grief of losing housemates who were also dear friends. Madison Mogan's family spoke of a daughter who brought joy and prioritized time with those she loved. Her stepfather described her as someone taken senselessly in a sudden act of E. Ben Mogan, Maddie's father, wiped his eyes as he spoke of his daughter, recalling that she had been so close to finishing her degree. The simple, devastating detail underscored how. The Goncalves family was among the most forceful. Kaylee's father, Steve, addressed Kohberger directly, telling him they were there to finish what he had started. He dismissed the Kaylee's older sister, Aliva Goncalves, looked directly at Kohberger and reportedly told him that no one feared him, no one was impressed, and no one thought he was important. When Aliva Goncalves finished speaking, applause reportedly broke out in the gallery, a rare and emotional moment. The families had turned a hearing meant to define the killer int. Jasmine Kernodle remembered her younger sister Xana as kind and funny, the person everyone considered their best friend. The Kernodle family's grief was raw and personal, recalling. Xana's father, Jeff Kernodle, shared a haunting detail. On the night of the murders, he had been only about 7 miles from the house and had considered driving over but decided. Ethan Chapin's family remembered a tall, goofy, easygoing young man who rarely took life too seriously. A triplet with a magnetic warmth, his absence left a staggering void. Ethan was one of triplets, and his loss left a permanent gap in a close family. His siblings and parents spoke of the future he would never have, the senselessness of his death, Through hours of wrenching testimony, Kohberger reportedly sat expressionless, showing no visible reaction to the family's anguish. When given the chance to speak, he declined. When the judge offered Kohberger the opportunity to make a statement, he respectfully declined, offering no allocution, no apology, and no explanation. The family's hope for some. Then came the words of District Judge Stephen Hippler, who did not hide his contempt. He reportedly said he could find nothing redeeming in Kohberger and described his acts as gross. Judge Hippler told the court that Kohberger's crimes were so monstrous they had hidden anything good or human that might once have existed in him. He acknowledged the motive might. The judge reportedly declared that the time had come to end Kohberger's notoriety and consign him to the isolation of permanent imprisonment. He made clear he did not want the kill. Judge Hippler sentenced Kohberger to 4 consecutive terms of life in prison without the possibility of parole, 1 for each victim, plus an additional 10 years for the burglary. The phrase carried absolute finality, life without parole, 4 times over. There would be no release date, no second chance at freedom. For the families, it was the justice they chased. Kohberger was remanded to the custody of the Idaho Department of Correction and later housed at a state correctional complex, the criminology student who had once studied offenders. The sentence delivered justice, yet for many it brought no true closure. The 4 young people were still gone. The reason was still unknown. The families had won accountability but shortly before sentencing, the court lifted the long-standing gag order, freeing lawyers and officials to speak. Almost immediately, new details began to emerge. After years of EMF, following the sentencing, the Moscow Police Department began unsealing hundreds of records connected to the investigation, reports, interviews, and documents that had been hidden. Among the records was an account of Kohberger's first interview after arrest in Pennsylvania. Investigators reportedly described mostly small talk until they raised the murders at newly released files reportedly revealed that a Washington State classmate had noticed a large scratch on Kohberger's face, resembling fingernail marks, around the time of the kill. A fellow teaching assistant reportedly told detectives that Kohberger was intelligent but selfish, would mislead him about shared work, and frequently talked about wanting a girl far. According to a release summary, after the killings, Kohberger reportedly became more talkative, venting in a way the classmate found unusual. The shift in behavior, noted by someone. Among the most chilling revelations, on the night of the murders, Kohberger reportedly searched online for local police dispatch audio. The details suggested a calculated interest, ion. Investigators reportedly found that while none of the victims' DNA was in Kohberger's car, an FBI analyst determined that soil on a shovel inside the vehicle matched dirt from the... One question lingered. Why did the killer leave 2 roommates alive? The former police chief reportedly offered theories, perhaps exhaustion after the attack or a sense of having. Released details sharpened the timeline. The surviving roommate reportedly saw the masked figure leaving through the sliding glass door at around 4 in the morning. That single S. The detail the roommate remembered most was strikingly specific. Bushy eyebrows visible above the mask. It was a small human observation that took on enormous weight. When Kohberger, the released police reports described a scene investigators found deeply disturbing, with evidence of a violent, forceful attack across the upper floors. Out of respect, many graph. As records were released, a judge ruled that the most graphic crime scene images would remain hidden, ordering portions showing the victims' bodies to be blacked out. The court rea. The judge noted there was little public value in seeing the most harrowing depictions, which had already caused the families extreme distress. Other photos, videos, and documents. Prosecutors took an extraordinary step to shield the families, asking the court to extend the no-contact order barring Kohberger from communicating with them. They requested an next. After the plea, the families of the victims filed a lawsuit against Washington State University, where Kohberger had studied and worked. The suit reportedly alleged the school igno. The lawsuit raised a haunting question. Could anyone have stopped this? It pointed to classmates' accounts of unsettling conduct and interests in the months before the murders. After sentencing, a former defense expert, criminologist Brent Turvey, spoke publicly, reportedly claiming there were serious problems with the chief physical evidence. His comment: the expert's claims fueled lingering questions among some observers about how the crucial DNA evidence had been handled and tested. The defense had reportedly raised chain of custody. A book by a former FBI agent reportedly revealed internal defense assertions about the evidence and disagreements over strategy. Titled around the plea itself, it added a new layer. Even as records poured out, many were heavily redacted, with large sections blacked out under public records rules. The gaps made it impossible for the public to confirm every envy. In December 2023, before the case ever reached trial, the University of Idaho demolished the King Road house. Crews leveled the three-story structure in roughly 9. The demolition split opinion. The university argued the house was a grim reminder that hindered healing and attracted morbid onlookers, but the Goncalves family publicly pleaded to. After demolition, the lot at 1112 King Road sat largely empty. The university spoke of building a memorial garden, yet for a long stretch the ground remained bare. To passers-by, the University of Idaho planned a memorial called the Vandal Healing Garden, designed with student involvement and nestled in a quiet, tree-lined spot on campus, intended to honor. Beyond the garden, scholarships and tributes were created in the victims' names, ensuring their memory would help future students. Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan became more than. Moscow would never be quite the same. The illusion of perfect safety was gone. Locks were checked, lights left on, and an awareness of vulnerability settled into a place that once. The case became a landmark example of investigative genetic genealogy, the technique that turned a single trace of DNA into a name. Once obscure, the method has helped crack cold sea. Without that DNA on the sheath, investigators might have struggled for far longer, perhaps indefinitely. The killer had no obvious link to the victims and left a scene with few traces. The case also exposed the double edge of true crime fascination. Millions followed every development, but obsessive online sleuthing sometimes spread misinformation and wrongly imped. Online communities dissected timelines, photos, and rumors, occasionally surfacing useful observations, but often amplifying false claims. Some named innocent people who faced horrors. The relentless media coverage turned Moscow into a stage. Reporters camped outside the courthouse, documentaries multiplied, and every filing made headlines, while the attention PR. Through it all, the families remained the case's moral center. They demanded transparency, honored their loved ones, and refused to let public interest fade into mere spectacle. Kaylee's father, Steve Goncalves, became one of the most visible advocates, frequently speaking out, questioning decisions, and pushing relentlessly for accountability. His outspoke. Aliva Goncalves, Kaylee's older sister, emerged as a powerful voice, especially at sentencing, where her defiant words stripped the killer of his menace. She channeled grief into. Friends remembered Kaylee Goncalves as fiercely loyal and protective, with a personality that filled every room. She had been on the cusp of a new chapter, her degree finished, and Madison Mogan was recalled as gentle and joyful, a steady source of light to those around her. Inseparable from Kaylee since childhood, she had already earned her degree credits, and Xana Knodel was the friend everyone adored, quick with a joke and endlessly kind. Vibrant and funny, she lit up gatherings and made people feel they belonged, her family remember. Ethan Chapin was the easygoing triplet who rarely took anything too seriously and made everyone laugh. Tall and warm-hearted, he had simply been staying with his girlfriend that night. Above everything lingers the question. No plea or sentence could answer. Why? Why these four? Why that night? The judge acknowledged the motive might never be known, and Kohberger whatever drove Bryan Kohberger to King Road, he has chosen to keep it sealed inside himself, perhaps forever. Experts note it is not unusual for a murder to end without a clear motive. Even with the case closed, officials suggested more could surface. As documents are reviewed and released, new details may emerge. The former police chief noted that sometimes, the Idaho murders will be studied for years in criminology classes, law schools, and forensic training. The very field Kohberger pursued will analyze his crimes. The case offers In the end, the evidence told a coherent story. DNA on a sheath, a white Elantra on camera, phone records tracing movements, and forensic traces tying a man to a scene he tried to. The breakthrough came not from a confession or an eyewitness who knew him, but from relentless, methodical work, genetic genealogy, surveillance analysis, and cross-country coordination. In the end, there was no dramatic verdict, no jury's gasp. The case closed with Kohberger's own admission, a guilty plea that traded a trial for certainty. It denied the public AC. Today, Bryan Kohberger sits in an Idaho prison, serving 4 consecutive life sentences with no possibility of parole. The man who studied crime now lives entirely within its cons. Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin, 4 young people with futures, families, and dreams taken in a single senseless night. The case will be remembered. To understand what happened, investigators reconstructed the final hours almost minute by minute using phone data, surveillance, and witness accounts. The picture that emerged is, it was a typical autumn Saturday. The University of Idaho had played a home football game earlier that day. As evening fell, students fanned out across town for parties and bars. A. By mid-evening, Kaylee and Maddie had made their way to a downtown bar known as the Corner Club. The 2 lifelong best friends spent the night together as they so often did. Witness. Across town, Xana and Ethan attended a party at the Sigma Chi fraternity house. The young couple spent their evening among friends in the familiar rhythm of campus social life. In the early hours, Kaylee and Maddie visited a downtown food truck captured on a live stream around 1:40 in the morning. They appeared relaxed and happy. The footage would be. After the food truck, Kaylee and Maddie reportedly stopped briefly elsewhere before heading home. Every movement was later pieced together from digital traces and accounts. According to court records, around 2:10 in the morning, one of the surviving roommates messaged an Uber driver for a ride from a bar back to the house, the other surviving room. Prosecutors stated the 4 victims arrived back at the King Road house at roughly 1:45 in the morning. By around 2, everyone was home, the 4 who would die and the tea. For the next 2 hours, the house was still, phones charged, conversations faded, and the students drifted toward sleep. Outside, Moscow slumbered under a cold November sky. Nothing. Meanwhile, surveillance reportedly captured a white Elantra moving through the area in the pre-dawn hours, passing near King Road more than once. To investigators reviewing footage, at around 4 in the morning, a DoorDash driver arrived at the house, delivering food ordered by Xana Kernodle, who was reportedly still awake. The driver pulled up, dropped off tea. Investigators believe the killer entered the home just minutes after the DoorDash driver pulled away. The timing was razor thin. A single ordinary delivery had unknowingly bracketed. One surviving roommate reportedly recalled thinking she heard Kaylee playing with her dog around 4 in the morning. The small domestic detail underscores how normal the moments. Then, the night changed. A surviving roommate reportedly heard what she thought was a comment about someone being in the house. She opened her door and looked out but saw nothing. She opened her door a second time, reportedly hearing what sounded like crying coming from Xana's room. The sound was deeply unsettling, but in the disorientation of the early hour. According to court records, the roommate then heard a male voice say something to the effect that it was okay, that he was going to help. The chilling phrase spoken in the dark by. She saw a man dressed in black, wearing a mask, walking past her toward the sliding glass door. She stood frozen, in shock, unable to move or cry out. The figure with the bushy eye. Investigators believe that by around 4:20 in the morning, the intruder had left the house, having fatally stabbed all 4 victims in a span of mere minutes. The attack was. In his haste, the killer reportedly left a knife sheath at the scene, beside one of the victims. That single mistake, a tan leather sheath bearing a trace of DNA, would ultimately. After the killer fled, the house fell into a terrible silence that lasted for hours. The surviving roommates, unaware of the full horror, eventually slept. Outside, dawn broke over. As morning advanced, the surviving roommates grew increasingly worried when their friends would not respond. Texts went unanswered. Calls went unreturned. A creeping dread settled. Court records describe a flurry of texts to the victims' phones, a message exchange between a surviving roommate and her father, and a call to a number not identified in filings. One surviving roommate, convinced something was wrong, called friends and asked them to come to the house. Several people arrived, and together they tried to make sense of the eerie. At 11:58 in the morning, nearly 7 hours after the intruder was seen, a 911 call was finally placed from the house after an unresponsive victim was discovered, a VO. Officers raced to the scene and entered the house, where they discovered 4 students dead from stabbing wounds across the upper floors. The 2 surviving roommates and the dog, Wee. Amid the horror, one small Mercy, Kaylee's dog Murphy, survived the night unharmed and was later cared for. The animal had been present through the unspeakable violence, yet was The two surviving roommates on the lower floors had lived through the night just feet from horror. Their survival was a matter of terrible chance, and the weight of it would fall. By that afternoon, word spread that 4 University of Idaho students had been murdered. Disbelief swept the campus and town. Parents called their children. Students lost their D. From a Saturday night out to a midday 911 call, the timeline reveals how a few ordinary hours turned into one of the most infamous crimes in recent memory. Every timestamp, every T. With the crime understood, the question became proof. Investigators assembled a case from several independent strands, each pointing toward the same man. No single item stood alone. The first and most crucial piece was the leather knife sheath left at the scene. Reportedly a Ka-Bar-style sheath, it carried a single source of male DNA on its snap, that biologic. Prosecutors revealed that about 8 months before the murders, Kohberger had reportedly purchased a knife matching the type that could have been the murder weapon, along with a S. Despite extensive searching, the actual knife used in the killings was never recovered. Investigators believe the killer disposed of it. Its absence became one of the case's endorei. The DNA on the sheath matched no one in any database until investigators turned to genetic genealogy and a trash pull in Pennsylvania. The garbage DNA reportedly indicated a parent. The third strand was the white Hyundai Elantra. Surveillance across Moscow reportedly captured a matching car near King Road around the time of the murders, arriving and leaving. The fourth strand came from Kohberger's cell phone. Records reportedly placed his device near King Road numerous times before the murders and showed a suspicious gap during the kill. During the crucial window of the murders, Kohberger's phone reportedly stopped connecting to the network, then resumed afterward. The defense would later claim he was simply in AR. The fifth strand was human, a surviving roommate who saw a masked man with bushy eyebrows leave through the sliding door, combined with the DoorDash driver who was near the home, me. Perhaps the boldest move was the trash pull outside the Kohberger family home in Pennsylvania. Investigators recovered garbage, extracted DNA, and compared it to the sheath, the FA. Critics noted the case was largely circumstantial, built from inference rather than a confession or eyewitness who knew the killer. But the strands, DNA, vehicle, phone, witnesses. To grasp the horror, many wanted to understand the man behind it. Bryan Kohberger was a doctoral student in his late 20s, raised in Pennsylvania, who had built his young life. Kohberger grew up in the Pocono Mountains region of eastern Pennsylvania. By many accounts, he was an ordinary kid from an ordinary family before his life took darker turns. The CU. According to various reports, Kohberger struggled in his youth, including with substance issues he reportedly overcame, and underwent a significant physical transformation. Friends. Kohberger pursued criminal justice academically, reportedly studying under a noted forensic psychologist known for work on offenders. He immersed himself in the study of why people. Reports surfaced that Kohberger had posted an online survey seeking input from former criminals, asking about their thoughts and emotions while committing offenses, intended as res. In the fall of 2022, Kohberger began a doctoral program in criminology at Washington State University in Pullman, just across the state line from Moscow. He worked as a teaching assistant. Kohberger interacted with undergraduates and colleagues. Some later described him as intelligent but difficult, even off-putting, a fellow assistant recount. In a detail many found striking, Kohberger had reportedly shown interest in law enforcement, including an internship application with a nearby police department. His fascination will. Crucially, investigators found no established personal connection between Kohberger and any of the 4 victims. He appeared to be a stranger. That absence of any relationship made. After the murders, Moscow's small police force, joined by the FBI and Idaho State Police, launched an intensive hunt for an unknown killer. For weeks, they revealed little publicly. As days passed without an arrest, public anxiety and frustration mounted. Armchair detectives speculated wildly. The victims' families pleaded for answers. Critics questioned with. In early December, investigators publicly asked for help identifying a white Hyundai Elantra seen near the scene, narrowing the model years. The appeal generated thousands of tips. Behind the scenes, the FBI reportedly deployed investigative genetic genealogy, comparing the sheath DNA to public ancestry databases, by tracing distant relatives and building fam. By late December, the strands converged. DNA pointed toward Kohberger's family. His car matched the Elantra. His phone records fit the timeline. Investigators had their suspect, In mid-December, Kohberger and his father had driven across the country from Washington to Pennsylvania in the white Elantra. Unbeknownst to them, the car itself was already a Foku. During the drive, Kohberger and his father were reportedly stopped by police twice in Indiana on the same day for minor traffic matters and released each time. Body cam footage lot. Once Kohberger reached his family home in the Pocono region, FBI surveillance reportedly watched the property. Agents monitored his movements and prepared for an arrest. The crimin. To confirm the DNA link, agents retrieved trash from the family home and tested it. The result, reportedly indicating a parent-child match with the sheath DNA, gave investigators T. In the pre-dawn hours of December 30th, 2022, a tactical team raided the Kohberger family home and arrested Bryan Kohberger. 47 days after the murders, T. News of the arrest stunned the public, especially the revelation that the suspect was a criminology PhD student. Relief swept Moscow, mingled with disbelief. For the families, W. After his arrest, investigators spoke with Kohberger at a Pennsylvania State Police barracks. Released records describe mostly small talk, with Kohberger reportedly noting he was a Kohberger reportedly told an early attorney that he expected to be exonerated at trial. He projected confidence in his innocence. For more than 2 years, his defense insisted he W. Kohberger waived extradition and was returned to Idaho to face the charges. He was booked into the Latah County Jail in Moscow, the very community he was accused of terrorizing. EHD. While held in Moscow, Kohberger's behavior reportedly drew notice. An inmate housed nearby later described long showers, frequent hand-washing, and sleepless nights, along with Len. Through early court appearances, Kohberger appeared composed and said little. At his arraignment in May 2023, he remained silent when asked to enter a plea, prompted. In May 2023, a grand jury indicted Kohberger on 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary. The formal charges set the stage for what was expected. The irony was inescapable. A man who had studied criminals now sat accused as one, his every move analyzed by the public and press. The student of crime had become its subject. Cree. For all the scrutiny of his life, no clear motive ever emerged from his background. There was no obvious grudge, no connection, no explanation. The profile of Bryan Kohberger remained. In the end, it was proximity of his car, his phone, and his DNA that undid him. He had moved to the region only months before and lived just miles away. The very closeness that With the arrest, indictment, and arraignment complete, Kohberger transitioned from a hunted suspect to a defendant facing the full weight of the law. The case now shifted from the Kohberger's defense, led by veteran attorney Ann Taylor, prepared a vigorous fight. They would challenge the DNA, the warrants, the genealogy, and the death penalty itself. For A. Prosecutors announced they would seek the death penalty, transforming the proceedings into a high-stakes capital case. Every decision now carried the weight of a possible execution. What followed was a long stretch of pre-trial litigation that stretched across years. Hearings addressed evidence, procedure, venue, and the death penalty. For the families, the Dell. Throughout the wait, the case never left the spotlight. Documentaries, podcasts, and nightly news kept it front of mind. Every filing was dissected. The Idaho murders had become a sweeping gag order kept officials silent, frustrating a public hungry for details. The enforced quiet protected the trial's integrity, but fueled speculation for more than a year. Even under the gag order, the case saw controversies, including a reported leak of investigative material to a television program that sparked an inquiry. The breach underscored the H. The defense repeatedly challenged the genetic evidence, questioning the genealogy methods, the warrants, and the chain of custody around the sheath. They sought additional testing. From the bushy eyebrows description to the alibi, nearly every detail became a battleground. The defense sought to limit testimony, prosecutors fought to admit it, each motion sharp. As the trial neared, the defense offered an alibi that would become one of the case's most debated claims. Kohberger, they said, had not been at King Road at all. Instead, he had B. At the heart of the defense's alibi was an extraordinary assertion. On the night of the murders, Kohberger had reportedly been out driving alone, looking at the stars. He often did. His attorneys described a young man who frequently took long, solitary night drives through the countryside around Pullman in Moscow. On the night in question, they said, he was S. The defense pointed toward the area of Wawawai County Park, along the Snake River south of Pullman, as the kind of remote spot where Kohberger reportedly drove that night. It was The stargazing alibi met open skepticism from the bench. Reports noted that judges handling the case reacted with audible doubt, even scoffing at the claim. An alibi with no choro. The fatal weakness of the alibi was simple. No one could verify it. There was no companion, no receipt, no clear digital trail placing him peacefully under the stars. In a case by prosecutors highlighted that Kohberger's phone reportedly stopped connecting to the network during the window of the murders, then reconnected afterward. The defense argued their W. Investigators reported that Kohberger's phone had connected to cell infrastructure near the King Road home numerous times in the months before the killings, often late at night. As the capital case advanced, the defense disclosed that Kohberger had reportedly been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. They argued the condition affected his behavior and Kohberger's lawyers filed motions seeking to remove the death penalty from the table, arguing in part that executing a person with autism spectrum disorder would be inappropriate. The court declined to strike the death penalty on those grounds. The judge ruled the case could proceed as a capital matter, leaving execution a real possibility if Kohberger were. The defense signaled it might point to alternate suspects, suggesting others could have been responsible. Prosecutors moved aggressively to bar such arguments, calling them specula. The single male DNA on the knife sheath snap remained the prosecution's anchor. The defense attacked how it was found through investigative genetic genealogy, demanding details. Investigative genetic genealogy, the technique that helped crack the case, was relatively novel and controversial. The defense probed how a distant relative's DNA in a database had. The defense scrutinized how evidence was collected, stored, and tested, probing for any break in the chain of custody. A single documented error could cast doubt on crucial items. No eyewitness placed Kohberger inside the house with a knife. The case was largely circumstantial, but it was a mountain of circumstance. DNA, car, phone, behavior, and timing all. Despite every motion and challenge, the defense faced a daunting climb. The physical and digital evidence kept aligning against their client. Veteran observers noted how rarely suck. Citing intense local publicity that could taint a jury, the court moved the trial out of Latah County to Ada County in Boise. The change shifted the proceedings to a larger courthouse. With the venue change, District Judge Stephen Hippler took command of the case in Boise. Known for a firm, no-nonsense manner, he would steer the proceedings through their final day. The Boise courthouse drew its own crowds, cameras, and a global audience. Each hearing became an event, live-streamed and dissected. The proceedings carried the dual weight of a soul. After years of delay, the court finally set a trial date for the summer of 2025, with jury selection to begin first. The long-awaited reckoning seemed near at last. Preparations called for summoning thousands of prospective jurors, an enormous pool reflecting how widely the case was known. Lawyers braced for the painstaking work of finding Pio. For the victims' families, the looming trial promised a grueling ordeal, months of testimony, graphic evidence, and reliving the worst night of their lives in public. They steeled. Across the country, millions prepared to follow the trial, blow by blow. Networks readied coverage, podcasters planned daily recaps. The case had become a shared national reckoning. Just weeks before the trial was to begin, the case took a stunning turn no one had publicly predicted. Word emerged that the defense and prosecution had been talking, and that reports surfaced that prosecutors had offered, and Kohberger had agreed to a deal. He would plead guilty to all counts in exchange for the death penalty being taken off the table. Under the reported terms, Kohberger would admit guilt on 4 counts of murder and 1 of burglary, accept 4 consecutive life sentences without parole, and waive his right to opt. News of the plea split the families. Some saw mercy in avoiding a years-long trial, endless appeals, and the trauma of graphic testimony. Others felt robbed of a full reckoning and The Goncalves family, among the most vocal throughout, reportedly objected to the plea, feeling blindsided and denied the full accountability of a trial. They had pushed relentless. Some families said they received little advance notice that a deal had been reached, learning of it as it became public. The speed and secrecy compounded their pain. After years of, the court scheduled a change of plea hearing for early July 2025. In a single session, the trajectory of the case would reverse. Instead of opening arguments, the were. On July 2, 2025, Bryan Kohberger stood before the court and pleaded guilty to all charges. After more than 2 years of insisting on his innocence, he answered E. He pleaded guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary, accepting responsibility for the deaths of Kaylee Madison, Zana, and Ethan. With those words, DHF. In exchange for his guilty plea, the death penalty was removed. Kohberger would not face execution. For prosecutors, the deal guaranteed conviction and spared families a wrenching. As part of the agreement, Kohberger waived his right to appeal the convictions or sentence. There would be no drawn-out legal aftermath, no decades of filings reopening old wounds. His exact reasons remained his own. Many speculated he pleaded to escape execution. Others wondered whether some flicker of acknowledgement played a part. Whatever drove the decisio, a guilty plea ended the trial but bypassed the public airing of evidence a trial would have forced. Many details would stay sealed or unspoken. The families gained certainty of con. With guilt admitted, only sentencing remained. The court set a hearing for later that July, where the agreed life terms would be formally imposed and, crucially, where the families. In the weeks before sentencing, families prepared victim impact statements, gathering the words they had waited years to say. Some would address the court, some would speak directly. The stage was set for one of the most emotional days the case would see. The man who had said almost nothing would sit and listen as those he harmed spoke their truth. The sentencing. Even with guilt established, the central question lingered. Why? No clear motive was ever presented. Kohberger offered no explanation, and investigators found no obvious grudge or, of everyone in the house and the town, why were these 4 chosen? The question gnawed at investigators and families alike. Some victims may have simply been present at the wrong M. Some reports, attributed to investigative journalism, speculated that one victim may have been the intended target, with the others encountered along the way. Such claims were naive. Madison Mogen and Kaylee Goncalves were lifelong best friends, found together in the aftermath. Their bond, captured in a now famous final photograph taken hours before they died. 2 roommates survived the night, physically unharmed. Why the attacker left them is unknown. One reportedly saw a masked figure yet was not pursued, perhaps chance, perhaps haste. Investigators focused on a sliding glass door on the home's 2nd level, near the kitchen, as a likely point of entry and exit. The detail of how the attacker moved through the home. As a criminology doctoral student, Kohberger had reportedly studied offenders, crime scenes, and the choices criminals make. The grim irony fueled endless speculation. Did his ACAD? Some wondered whether his research into criminal behavior influenced the alleged effort to clean evidence, avoid cameras, or evade detection. Yet the very precautions reportedly fa. By pleading guilty, Kohberger spared himself a trial and spared the public a full accounting. No witnesses testified, no complete narrative was laid out in open court. Much of wah. After sentencing, authorities released hundreds of investigative documents, yet many were heavily redacted, with names and details blacked out to protect privacy and ongoing concern. In the vacuum of a full explanation, theories multiplied across podcasts, forums, and documentaries. Some sought patterns, others chased shadows. Without a confession of motive, Moscow, Idaho, a small college town that once felt impossibly safe, was permanently marked by the killings. Residents spoke of a lost innocence, of locking doors they once left open. In late December 2023, the University of Idaho demolished the King Road house where the killings occurred. In roughly 90 minutes, the structure was reduced to ruin. Where the house once stood, an empty lot was left behind, fenced and quiet. For a time, it sat bare, a blank space heavy with meaning. Passers-by paused at the void, a silent remindé. The university announced plans for a memorial, envisioned as a healing garden to honor the 4 students. The space was meant to offer reflection and remembrance, a place of peace. In the wake of tragedy, scholarships and memorial funds were established to honor Kaylee, Madison, Zana, and Ethan. Friends and strangers contributed, determined that the four be are. Out of grief, several family members became advocates, pressing for transparency, victims' rights, and awareness. They spoke at events, gave interviews, and pushed institutions for. Some families pursued accountability beyond the courtroom, including reported legal action questioning whether warning signs about the suspect had been overlooked near campus. The murders prompted hard conversations about safety in college towns, off-campus housing, and emergency response. Universities and communities reviewed protocols and communication. The case showcased the power of investigative genetic genealogy, the technique that helped identify a suspect from a distant DNA match. Its success here signaled a new era in Solvay. The case became a defining true crime phenomenon, drawing millions to podcasts, live streams, and documentaries. It held up a mirror to a culture fascinated by violence and justice. Online sleuths swarmed the case, sharing theories and, at times, wrongly implicating innocent people. The frenzy showed both the reach and the danger of crowdsourced investigation. From the first reports to the final sentence, the media spotlight never dimmed. Coverage informed the public but also intensified pressure on investigators, courts, and grieving FA. Beyond the verdict, the case left lessons about forensic science, media, online behavior, and the fragility of safety. It revealed how modern evidence can catch a careful killer. In the end, the case confronted a hard truth. Some acts resist explanation. No degree of analysis fully illuminated why a promising student would allegedly destroy 4 young lives. Books, documentaries, and series soon retold the case, each seeking to make sense of the senseless. Some offered insight, others fueled controversy, including disputes over disclose. Kaylee Goncalves was remembered as fiercely loyal, vibrant, and ready for her next chapter, having finished her degree with a job awaiting her. Friends recalled her strong spirit. Madison Mogan, known as Maddie, was remembered for her gentle warmth and her lifelong friendship with Kaylee. Bright and kind, she too had reached the cusp of graduation and adulthood. Zana Kernodle was remembered as lively, funny, and full of energy, a young woman who lit up the room she entered. At 20, she was building her life and her relationship with Ethan Chapin, a triplet with an easy smile, was remembered for his kindness and warmth. Staying over with his girlfriend Xana that night, he was 20, beloved by a large family. Though the case bore the killer's name and the world's attention, those closest insisted the 4 be remembered for who they were, not how they died. Friends, athletes, streamers, the bond between Kaylee and Maddie and the love within the group endured as a defining image of the tragedy. In grief, families and friends held tightly to the joy these young Looking back, the case traced a clear arc: a quiet Saturday night, a silent intruder, 4 lives taken in minutes, then weeks of fear, a methodical investigation, and arrest, years. The journey of the case stretched from a blood-soaked house on King Road to a solemn courtroom in Boise. Across more than 2.5 years, it moved through fear, forensics, and, in the end, it was modern forensics and old-fashioned investigation that caught him. DNA on a sheath, a car on camera, a phone betraying his movements, and the reach of genetic gen. The guilty plea and 4 life sentences delivered justice, though many felt it incomplete. There was conviction without a full trial, punishment without explanation, finality with O. Despite everything uncovered, key questions endure. The motive remains unstated. The full sequence inside the house stays partly sealed. Why these 4? Why that night? Why at all? Beyond the verdict, the families continue to live with their loss, carrying their children's memories forward through advocacy, remembrance, and love. Birthdays pass, anniversaries. Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin. 4 names, 4 lives, 4 futures. Amid the noise of investigation, trial, and spectacle, the simplest act of healing came slowly to Moscow and to all who loved the 4. Memorials rose, scholarships endured, and the empty lot stood as silent witness. Time softened the sharpest edges of The Idaho murders haunt us because they shattered the illusion of safety in an ordinary place, because the why was never answered, and because 4 bright young lives were stolen. If this story moved you, like this video and subscribe for more deeply researched true crime documentaries. Drop a comment with your thoughts, share it to keep these 4 names rem.